Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Great to be back.
Yeah, yesterday we celebrated our 5th anniversary of the morning show.
Yep.
And you were a regular.
Oh, yes.
Yes, I was.
We miss you.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's amazing the amount of information you were able to bring to us and to the viewers so quickly during that time. Does it feel like 5 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, it's in some ways it does, in some ways it doesn't,
Yeah.
I guess. But yes, I was sort of reflecting on that and thinking back about how frequently I was here during, there was a stretch there where, I mean,
You lived here.
Yeah, it was weekly probably.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Coming in, but I mean, just such a unique, interesting time, and I think there's some things that can be learned and some lessons from that, and I think there's a lot of things that people probably want to forget and are ready to kind of move on from.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, we did yesterday. We were looking at some old photos, and we had forgotten that you couldn't get a haircut during COVID.
Right, that's right.
There were a lot of things you couldn't do, but yeah, this show was really one of the only things going on. So a lot of relevant information, and you guys, JC was one of the leaders in the community around the pandemic as well.
Yeah, I felt like we had really good leadership who kind of helped recognize early on that this was going to be something that was going to be a while, and so we needed to pull back and move things online, and we really took our time and deliberately opened back up when it was appropriate as everyone felt comfortable. And so we had a whole group at the college that I was a part of looking at the data and looking at the guidance and everything to kind of put together our plan for how we were going to get through it and come back. And I think that we were able to do that pretty well. So
Yeah.
I think that worked out.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're talking about time. Time is such a thief. Your kids were how old when we were first?
Well,
I mean, they weren't in school
They
yet.
would have been 3 and 5
Yeah,
at
so-
that point.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the things I was kind of thinking about when I was invited back is kind of what are some things that we can take away? What have we learned of 5 years on now? And I think that now we've got enough data to look at a couple things. And I was going to point out, kind of one thing that worked and one thing that didn't. And I think one thing that we see has worked really well is virtual doctor's visits. There's a lot of evidence now that, in fact, a lot of people were going to the doctor when they probably didn't need to. They could probably just talk with a doctor and get things worked out. And so that's, I think, a positive going forward, that that has become, a really important part of medicine now, and it really wasn't before, the virtual visit. That's such a large piece of it now. And there's some benefits from that. On the other side, I think it's very clear that we've learned that from the educational standpoint, especially K-12, being virtual was probably not a great thing. And there's pretty good evidence that the longer people were away, the worse those losses were, and we're still working on getting those back now. So. We didn't know a lot of these things, and I think it's important to recognize that, especially from a public health standpoint, I think it's clear looking back that, we probably just need to be honest when we know things and when we don't know things. And I think that just telling people sort of where things are at is probably our best bet going forward. But there's I think a lot that we're still trying to figure out and still learning about the virus and how things are going to change. And I think that that's all we can do is just try to keep learning as much as we can and try to be honest with people about where we're at, what things we know and what we don't.
Well, I think one of the things that probably caused some of that suspicion, instructions to wipe down your groceries. You leave them in the garage overnight before you brought them in the house, things like that.
And I think that a lot of that stems from just, people didn't know this was a completely new virus. Nobody really knew what things were going to be needed and what weren't. And we saw that sort of evolve through the pandemic as the guidance changed, and then, that led to confusion amongst people. Are we supposed to wear masks? Are we not supposed to wear masks? Is this something that is transmitted through our clothing? Is it not transmitted through that, or our groceries or whatever? And that's always the challenge when you have a new virus, especially in this case, one that behaved in many ways a lot differently from other respiratory viruses. And so sort of at first the approach was to kind of treat it like every other respiratory virus, and then I think people realized pretty quickly that it's actually not like that. It's quite a bit different.
And it seems like either we're more aware of, or there are just more viruses spreading, like RSV. We've got flu. We've got still COVID still around, and there are viruses we don't even know what they are that are still affecting people. That there aren't maybe tests or any indications of what they might be.
Yeah, and that was something I was kind of hoping that coming out of this we would recognize that it's really important to make sure that we have surveillance mechanisms that are out there that are paying attention to new viruses that are popping up, even if there's only a few cases here or there. And I don't know that that is necessarily happening now, but I think that is going to be important to, not only the things that we already know about, but what new things are potentially going to come about. We've seen what can happen with the influenza, the H5N1, passing through mainly poultry and other birds right now. As of yet, that has not really shown a capability of effectively being able to pass to humans. But that is one that public health people have been nervous about for decades. Is if we have the right changes in an influenza virus, that it is able to jump to people effectively, you could have another pandemic on your hands. So monitoring these things and paying attention to what things are circulating, I think, is going to be really important going forward.
Do you have anything you're researching right now that you're working on?
No, just continue to try to stay up with new things that we're learning or new things that we're finding out. I think there is a fair amount of research still going on about understanding aspects of the virus. And like you mentioned, new things are always coming about, and changes are occurring even in known species of viruses that are out there. So best we can do is just try to stay on top of the new things we're learning.
Did you find that your students became more interested or more engaged in the studies, particularly in your specialty of microbiology during and after the pandemic?
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting because in many ways people are really interested in trying to understand more about the virus and the pandemic and things like that. But on the other hand, I know those are really difficult years for a lot of people. And so there's other aspects of things that they probably aren't as interested in going back and thinking about. So yeah, I think there definitely was an increased interest there, and I hope that we can keep talking about it and keep thinking about it.
Well, we hope we can keep talking about it with you. Thanks for coming back, and please come see us again.
I definitely will do that.
Good to
Thank
see
you.
Matt.
You too.
Dr. Matt Badtke from Jackson College with us today on The Morning Show as we look back on the 5-year anniversary of the beginning of COVID. Stay with us. More of The Morning Show next.